was just thinking how to go to New York. Should I go this way, to Tokyo, Japan? Should I go that way? Which way is cheaper? And he said that actually sometimes he even dreamed, in a dream he dreamt he had come to New York. He told us one time, others went to UK and failed. If I'm to fail, I wanted it to be in a different place. And then he met Mr. Agarwal, a Mathura business person. And in passing, he mentioned to him that, as he did to everybody he met, he wanted to go to the West. And this Mr. Agarwal, who had just made his acquaintance just a few moments earlier, he volunteered to get him a sponsor. He had a son in America, so he'd done this a few times. He'd met a Saudi, and they would mention they wanted to go abroad to teach Hindu culture, and he would ask his son, Gopal, an engineer in Pennsylvania, to provide a sponsorship for him. So Prabhupada said, yes, please do it. Interestingly enough, for all the people that Gopal had sponsored, it was only Srila Prabhupada who actually took it up and left India and came to the West. But Prabhupada couldn't just dream about getting to the West. He needed finance, he needed money. So in March of '65, he went again to Bombay. He didn't go to Bombay to sightsee. He was attempting to sell his books, an honest living, sell these Srimad Bhagavatams, and with the money he could realize, he could prepare his trip. He wasn't staying in a hotel. He wasn't staying in a nice ISKCON temple because they didn't even exist. He was staying in a free dharamshala, the Prem Kutir. Now, in our early days in India, we often spent time in free dharamshalas. So what was a free dharamshala? Anybody here not know what a dharamshala is? So,
the lodge, when we built the lodge, it wasn't called the Palace Lodge, it was called the dharamshala. When the first years were built.
but at least there was walls and bathrooms with flush toilets. So the dharamshalas, even in the, when we got there, early 70, 1970, imagine in that time, in the 60s. So cement floor, hole in the floor, you had to go outside with a bucket to get water, turn on the tap, hope it would come. It wouldn't be heated water, definitely not. Little straw on the floor. That was a free dharamshala. So there he was with his books. And it was difficult to find customers. Here we are in India, the holy land of India. And people were already becoming disinterested in spiritual life. They weren't so interested in such literature. There was a librarian at Jai Hind College. He purchased books for the library and even took Prabhupada around to try to find some more outlets without any success. So eventually he returned to Delhi. He was again looking for ways of selling the books, looking for whatever opportunity he could get. And then, to his great surprise, he was contacted by the Ministry of External Affairs. And he was informed that his no objection certificate for going to the U.S. was ready. So he hadn't instigated this proceeding. So he had to inquire from the minister, what happened? And they showed there was a statutory declaration form signed by Mr. Gopal Agarwal of Butler, Pennsylvania. And in that form, Mr. Agarwal solemnly declared he would bear the expense of Bhaktivedanta Swami during his stay in the USA. So even though it had just been a very brief and passing exchange with Gopal's father, he had done it. And Gopal did it just a He didn't have any idea who Bhaktivedanta Swami was or who he would become. So now that meant he needed to get what they called the P form, he needed to get a visa, he needed to get a passport. All these things just to get to the point of getting out of India, and then he needed to get some transportation. So the passport wasn't too difficult to obtain, and Krishna Pandit helped him. By July 10th of 65, he had his passport, and then he asked Krishna Pandit if he would pay for the trip abroad, and Krishna Pandit refused. He was thinking, it's against Hindu principles for a sadhu to go abroad. And probably more to the point, it's very expensive. So he refused. But he had his passport, he had his sponsorship papers. And then he returned to Bombay. So this time, it wasn't to sell books or raise funds for printing. He wanted a ticket. And he again approached Srimati Murarji because she had paid for contributed heavily to the printing of the Bhagavatam. He showed his sponsorship papers to her secretary, and his secretary, Mr. Choksi, was very impressed because they didn't expect much from this old man from Vrindavan. What could he do? He was elderly. So he went to Srimati Murarji and he said, the Swami from Vrindavan is back. He's published his books with your donation. He has a sponsor, and he wants to go to America. He wants you to send him on a Scindia ship. And Scindia ship lines at that time was, it was an impressive, it wasn't, chump change. It was an impressive business. And Srimati Murarji, she had taken over when her husband left his body. So she goes, no, the Swami's too old to go to the United States and expect to accomplish anything. So Mr. Choksi went back, he told that to Srila Prabhupada. And she said that, why don't you just stay here in India? Why do you have to go to the States? Finish the job here. But Prabhupada was fixed. What they could not understand, that he was acting on behalf of the order of his spiritual master, a pure devotee. So he told Choksi how to go back and convince her, and he was like coaching him what he should say. But when he went to her again, she said, no, the Swami's not healthy. It will be too cold there. He might not even be able to come back. And she doubted. What could he do? Would he be able to accomplish there? People in America were not so cooperative. And they probably wouldn't even listen to him. So Prabhupada became a little exasperated, and he demanded a personal interview. And it was granted, so with great determination, he repeated his emphatic request, please give me one ticket. Again she goes, Swamiji, you're so old. You're taking this responsibility. Do you think it's all right? And he just reassured her. In fact, it was described. He lifted his hand. No, it will be all right. Prabhupada made a face, because her assistants, his secretaries were saying, Swamiji is going to die there. Prabhupada made a face to dismiss the foolish rumor, and he insisted, just give me one ticket. And finally she relented. All right, get your P form, and I'll make an arrangement for you to go on our ship. So at that time, a P form was necessary for any Indian national who wanted to leave the country. Even when we were in India, that was something. If anybody wanted to go, you had to get this P form. So the P form was a certificate given by the State Bank of India, and it certified that this person had no excess debts in India. It's cleared by the bank, and that would take a while to obtain. And he still had to get his visa. So all of this had to be done in Bombay, and then he had to find a place to stay. So Srimati Murarji agreed to let him reside at Scindia Colony. So the Scindia Colony was a housing compound of apartments her company, Cynthia. So he was staying in a small, unfurnished apartment with only his metal trunk and a typewriter. And the resident employees, they all knew Mrs. Meraji was sending this elderly sovereign to the West. And some of them became a little interested in his cause. And they would come, they would listen to him, he would speak to them. And they were impressed because, wow, he was so old and he was going abroad. And he was a sadhu and a scholar. And they heard about the book, so he started giving classes to them. And one person actually bought the books and was reading them, Mr. Basahavada. Every single day he was going out to get a visa and the P form, selling his books, seeking contacts and support for his future Bhagavatam printing, because obviously this was the first canto and there was several more to go. One person was explaining that he'd be out the whole day, the entire day, from early in the morning, and he'd come back in the evening, he'd be dead tired, and he would just sit down. Sometimes he'd have his child would be on the back of a chair, and he'd be sitting in the window ledge, just sitting. And he'd say, Swamiji, did you have any good contacts today? And he'd reply, not much today. I didn't get much. Tomorrow Krishna will give me more details. And he would just sit, and then he'd explain 10 minutes later. He'd sit up in his chair, he'd get off the window, sit up, and he'd start writing. So this person was, how is it he would be so dead tired in 1 minute, and then in another minute, even though he was dead tired, he wasn't defeated. He would never speak of discouragement. He explained that his temperament was very adjustable and homely. And his friends would sometimes come and they'd offer a few rupees, and he would say, all right, it will help. And he would walk from the colony was in Andheri Station. If you've been out in Juhu, then Juhu, next place over, Andheri. So he would walk from the colony to Andheri Station, 2 kilometers every day, going out. Why was he walking? Because the bus cost money, and he didn't have that kind of spirit change. And he got a little paper printed. It was entitled, My Mission. And he would show this to influential men in his attempts to get further financing for the Bhagavatam. And he explained, despite the scientific advancement and material comforts, there was no peace in the world. Has anything changed? What is different now? When people tell me, oh, things are different, tell me what's different. In spite of scientific advancement and material comforts, there is no peace in the world. Therefore, Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, these books, the glory of India, must be spread all over the world. So he was having trouble with getting this P form. So finally he went to the bank, and there was an officer there, and he said, Swamiji, you're being sponsored by a private man, so we cannot accept it. If you were invited by some institution, then we would consider it. But you're being invited by a private man for 1 month. And after 1 month, if you were in difficulty, there are so many obstacles. So Srila Prabhupada, he could be very stubborn if it was required. He would just say, what have you done? I have decided not to, and the guy goes, I decided not to sanction your P form. Prabhupada said, no, don't do this. Send me to your superior. It shouldn't be like this. So somehow, he took the request, and he sent his file to the chief of foreign exchange, something like that, you know. He was the supreme person in the State Bank of India. And he asked the secretary, do you have such and such on file? Kindly put it out for Mr. Rao. I want to see him. So the secretary agreed. And he put the file out, and he put his name down. So he was waiting. And then Mr. Rao, the supreme person in the bank, came out. And he said, Swamiji, I have passed your case. Don't worry. So suddenly there was a big obstacle that just evaporated. And then following Srimati Maharaj's instruction, Mr. Choksi made final arrangements for Srila Prabhupada. He had no more clothes. You've seen that picture of him with a heavy-duty warm coat. He took him out to buy a wool jacket and other woolen clothes. He spent $250 on new clothes. Like, this was at a time when 1 rupee you could still get something substantial. So this 250 rupees, now what can you buy? Kuchne, practically nothing. But yes, he got him that, and he included some new dhotis. So then he requested Mr. Choksi to print 500 copies of a small pamphlet containing the 8 verses written by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, plus an advertisement for the Srimad Bhagavatam in context as an advertisement for the India Steamship Company. So in this way he was showing his gratitude to Mrs. Murarji for the sponsorship. So he arrived, actually then finding Mrs. Murarji scheduled, I'm looking at the time, a place for him in one of her ships. It seemed to take a while, and the reason it was taking a while is because she was making certain that he would travel on a ship with a captain who understood the need of a vegetarian and a brahmana. And she told the Jaladuta captain, Arun Pandya, to carry extra vegetables and fruits for Swamiji. So he arrived in Calcutta 2 weeks before the Jaladuta's departure. And although he lived much of his life in the city, now he had nowhere to stay. It was what, as he had written in his Vrindavan Bhajan, I have my wife, sons and daughters, grandsons and everything, but I have no money, so they're a fruitless glory. Although in this city he had been so carefully nurtured as a child, those early days were gone. Where have my loving mother, where has my loving father and mother gone now? And where are all my elders? Who are my own folk? Who will give me any news of them? Tell me, who? All that is left of this family is a list of names. Prabhupada was beautifully and brutally honest. A week before his departure, on August 6, Srila Prabhupada traveled to Mayapur to visit the Samadhi of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. And then he returned to Calcutta and was continuing with some speaking engagements. So on the day of his departure, Srila Prabhupada took stock of his meager possessions. He had personally only 1 suitcase, an umbrella, and a supply of dried cereal. He didn't know what he would find to eat in America. Perhaps there would only be meat. So he was prepared to live on boiled potatoes if he had to, and the cereal. And his main luggage, the most important, the trunks of his books, was being handled separately by Cynthia Cargo. 200 3-volume sets, and the very thought of those books gave him confidence. When the day came for him to leave, he would need that confidence. He was making a monumentous break from the previous life, and yes, he was old and he wasn't in good health, and he was going unknown and probably to an unwelcoming country. To be poor and unknown in India is one thing. Even in Kali Yuga, there was a little bit of Vedic culture, and if you were a sadhu, you would be given some respect, some care. But he was going to America. It was different. He'd be no one, a foreigner. And there was no tradition of sadhus, no temples, no free ashrams. But when he thought of the books he was bringing, transcendental knowledge in English, he became confident. When he met someone in America, he would give them a flyer. Here